What's up, yins guys? Time for another video. And some of yins guys, if you're still watching me, a few of yins guys, this is some shit that I actually should say because it's mixed with a little bit of everything and kind of makes everything kind of come together. And I've been meaning to do this because I want to call it, this is one of the keys to getting over. And my version of getting over, or maybe even some of your version of getting over, compared to somebody else's version of getting over. And I wanted to, and you know, I always jump subjects and I rant about this stuff, you know, say whether my girlfriend has stuff on TV or I have something on TV, and I'm like ranting away, and then it should be a time to make a video. And even if people don't like your videos, my rule also too is if you're yakety yak ranting all the time, you better make a video, do some fucking thing somewhere. And I have a little bit of a Henry Rollins philosophy in there too, you know. I try to cover just about everything, but this is for some of these guys where some of these subjects I covered before, and I want to mix it with like how people will hide behind their religion, or even hide behind their anti-religion, or whether you want to put drugs for example, even though this ain't entirely about drugs in the way it is. And some people will be flipping me off, but some people will have respect and understand what I'm saying. And for example, a couple of you guys watching this, whether you're black or white, like some friends I know that are both, I have friends that are both black and white. And this is not at all to bash anybody that smokes a cigarette or say I was only subjects of pot, whether it's legal or not. If you're somebody that had long hair or older, younger than me, the classic smoking pot and listening to Led Zeppelin, this is not against you. And if you're black or any other color that smokes a little pot and listens to Bob Marley or some reggae or something, you know, I was talking about some of the times where it used to be harmless until all this other bullshit, you know, that you got to worry about the legal and non-legal stuff, who you buying a shit for, what they're putting in. And then I'm a firm believer that even, say for example, cigarettes. And I try to say, you know, I had issues, you know, my own family members, my mother a hypocrite, that you ain't allowed to spend money on this, tell you stuff that's a waste of money, and you pay your part and pull your weight when you're living in a house. And they're telling you every little thing that's a waste of money, but then they buy 4 or 5 cartons of cigarettes per month because of the taxes in our state on cigarettes. I was going to do a video on completely that my state, the governor, put tax on cigarettes. Already, like people like my mother, for example, she just goes across the border, you know, to West Virginia and all that, and then buys a whole bunch there, but yet she'll use a bunch of gas together, depending on the price of the gas, and you're not really getting over that much. But my philosophy, I grew up in environments where, geez, it's a wonder I wasn't addicted to something. Oh yeah, if you're somebody that, yeah, if you pass like a place on the way from work, if you have beer and a fish sandwich, that's not the point. Like, this is on terms of, you know, when I grew up, from the days I was in school, the long-haired hippie person, or if you're somebody with dreads or whatever, and you get your first job and you finally start at minimum wage, your first apartment, but then you land a pretty good paying job for a while until you go back to shit again. You're proud of yourself, and you know, you get gratified by the old people or other kind of people, different sizes. Hey, he must be a director, he got money in his hand. And I hate that there is this, I'm trying to be fair about this too, there is this other element, okay? First of all, you've got the one element that the religious perspective where you got some people, don't get me wrong, are nice people. And there's this rule about humbleness and about like if you're not into something, if you don't drink or use drugs, you're required, well, some places more than others, you're required in certain cases, or you're looked at like there's something wrong with you if you're supposedly required to be robotically, scripturally correct, like almost. But then there are some religions that try to get away from that, and they're more lax in things, and do slaying of the spirit things. I'm trying to nail down a basic point. But you have respect for some people on the religious side because they will say some of the things you do, you know what I mean? But, for example, you'll have some things that you can, because the preacher said, even though you're required to be scripturally correct on everything, they'll say some of the things that, you say, but you'll be politely told, like, oh, it's, if you don't use the Bible and have a Bible verse in every little thing. But in some of their sermons, or some people that are more versed in the Bible than you, they'll say a similar thing like you always say. Well, anyway, you'll find yourself having this conversation, and you'll have respect for something they're saying, right? And you find yourself saying, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, but how come every time you do it, how come every time I say it, it's considered worldly wisdom? And like you might be politely saying, like, you're being like that thing where they speak against like the humanism thing, the secular humanism thing, that even though you have a sense to stay away from certain things. And I mean, well, you have to have this thing, on the political side that everybody wants to get you addicted to something, and you buy their shit, it's the first part. Okay, there's the religious side. But then if you were totally against the religious side and totally against police state, there's this other virtue that you're not allowed to talk about, where I just said over there, if you're black or white, you smoke pot a little bit bitter, and listen to Bob Marley, some reggae, and little Led Zeppelin, like the old school pot smoking day, which some of us are willing to accept that if it's more like that. Now it's getting too fucked up. And then, you wanted to, but like in some cases, you don't want to say the marijuana. I would make a totally different video about this, but I'm going to throw this in here at random. That controversy about marijuana being a gateway drug. I don't really agree with that in a sense, because you know what? I think sometimes cigarettes are, because if you're in that thing where you need a cigarette real bad, people bump cigarettes off of you, and you get these friends based on you get a cigarette off of each other, and then your whole friendship, or even if you have a relationship with somebody, of the opposite gender that you end up living with, is the whole thing going to be based on, getting together money if you're poor to get cigarettes? Then you may meet your significant other or your best friend that's another dude you pal around with in a bar. I can argue that nothing against somebody once they have a beer, fish sandwich at the end of the day after work, but I'm more leaning that the beer in the beer joint is the gateway, the beer place is the gateway drug. Because if you go to want to go someplace that's a restaurant and bar, that's a better way to spend your money, and be gratified and be empowered, tip the waitress and all that. And too much of the drinking and smoking, you can't even get to your job in time, and you get all cranky with each other, and at the end of the day, and you need that cigarette, and you got, But since you go to these bars, the wrong ones, unlike somewhere where you want to go after work, I have a beer with a good meal, you smell good food in this place. But if you go to these places, I worked next to people that were so much friends that they were somewhat idiots that they went to these bars where the people out of college are going to. Guy that, I remember being in my 20s, and this guy, he back then was in his 50s. But how old is he now, what I mean? But I remember these guys in work, like I work with, went to these, they even wore the t-shirts at the bar, in a particular city. In a sense, they're too old to be going to these fucking bars where these college, people out of college were hanging out. He gets himself a 20-year-old girl, and he's, before work, like say he decides that she's going to take the car or take him, drop him off to work, and he got to show off. He got this 20-year-old a girl, and he is smoochy, you know, in front of the rest of the guys. And my age, I couldn't do that shit. You know what I mean? I think that's like fucking ridiculous. I mean, some of these people, it's like crossing over into. Why would the fuck would you even want to go to a bar where all these younger people are out? Then you got the old people's bar. You know, some of you people got those. Well, I grew up in a steel mill town that was actually a small town separate from the rest of the city. Being a small kid, school buses and all this around here was steel mills, right? A smaller part of the town where I lived, separate from this town, right? For the size of the town, it had all kind of bars because there was mills, smokestacks everywhere, and everybody was working, and all the bars were full. In this small town, there was a bar in every. And then even this town where I actually am now, man, there was a bar just all over the place, and they were all full, and that's how people made their money. And some were restaurants, so. So I had a thing in my childhood where I was around that. You know, there were times when my natural father was married to my mother. You know, they're divorced. They're drinking. His drinking kind of eventually led to the divorce. He was real prosperous for a while, even though he drank. He worked for the railroad when the mill was going on. He made pretty damn good money. He drank, and then before my mother met my step. But anyway. To get to that point, not to tell a life story, where I grew up in, where it was actually acceptable in this town for a while and they got away with it, that your father and that just, you know, if the mother is somewhere else or wherever, you know, or for whatever reason, you know, the spending of the time sometimes, your father actually, you know, the parents brought the kids right to the bars. They're sitting at the table. They were being allowed to throwing money at you, you know, to play the jukebox. And there was times where the kids, you know, even monopolized the pinball and the pool tables. Okay, and there were these guys. They worked at the mills. A lot of them, you know, were motorcycles, bandanas, and everything, going in there, and the kids were there. I mean, a very unique. Environment, but I mean, there was the time where there was laws, but they weren't being enforced like they are now. I mean, you can't get away with that shit now. There's a point I think you can bring kids in if it's more of a restaurant than a bar, you know what I mean? But yeah, I grew up that era, you know, and it was like, yeah, you had both white and black people, you know, people were working in the mills. Shoot, I have friends, both white and black, can tell you the stories they're older about. When they were in the mill, everybody had made money. But I know I got a little off the subject with that. But anyway, and then you get an environment like later in life, you know, you grow up, you're richer or poorer, you know what I mean? You know, you get your first job. You know, some of us like me, as a teenager, I had a bandana and mirror sunglasses. I'm walking around with a cigarette. I'm trying to imitate Guns N' Roses, you know, cross between Axl Rose and Slash. And somehow, you know, when I got my own job, I actually quit smoking. I didn't want to be asking people for cigarettes, and they got people that were, you know what I mean, a pain in the ass, you know, that you would catch, they're asking everybody for cigarette, you know, and then you catch them, they got all kind of cigarettes, and you're like, mother. Then anyway, you get your job, your first job, you realize you want to get the fuck out of the house. Your first job, you know what I mean? And instead of the bumming the cigarettes, instead of having this roommate that you and this roommate to get together, you're not just gather money, get cigarettes or get some beer once in a while. People like me rebelled against that. Don't want people around. I mean, you don't want the parties and all that stuff like everybody else wants when you get your first apartment. Yeah, when you get your first place too, some people will find out, man, they're come crawling around and people didn't even like you. You went to school. Oh yeah, we're gonna have a party. No. Because I learned from a younger age too, but people got into that shit and they're kissing the ass of that crowd. Them fucking people want to take over. So what I'm trying to tell you, if you get anything out of this video, the keys to getting over, like, and you gotta, even though in a political way too, I'm going to bring up the YouTube video, The Story of Your Enslavement. Some of the things that you think would liberate you ends up controlling you. You go against one thing and you're another. How come some things end up ruined? So, you know, you having your first apartment way back in there, you realize, I had a restaurant. I was always smelling food. I'm like, oh, squeeze out some money and pay the rent late that I can eat out more often and talk nice to the waitresses, you know, and all that stuff and stuff like that, you know. And there was a time where around the corner there was a place that was a cafe, not a, like, you know, the place that's, oh, we're not a, that they give you a broad hint, we're not a bar. You know, they'll let you have a beer before or after a meal, and there'll be a hint where the waitress would say, well, it's if you're drinking pop, for soda pop, for example, the waitress will come around more often. Oh, you want anything else? But then, say if you had a beer, you know, too, they do that less, you know, and go and doing some other things, you know, for a while. It's like a broad hint. We're not a bar. If you want to do that, go to the bar down the street. We're not a bar, you know. We're more, you know. So I used to go around that corner of a cafe and a couple friends there, and it would be like one before and after, a rolling rock before and after. And didn't like that bar stool shit. I tried that, like, there was that thing for a while, just that I did for a while in my beginning years. But what I'm trying to tell you is the real key to getting over, not depending on cigarettes, vaping, and booze. It's a thing that wants to weigh you down. I was more like the person, okay, I could squeeze out a meal somewhere in a restaurant somewhere, you know, and a cafe where there's a TV in there, because I was too cheap ass with the first apartment to get a TV and cable. I said, I ain't fucking paying that. You know, so you'd be in a cafe somewhere and watch the little TV, whatever they have on, and it's like, and you're geared more to, okay, this is like what you want might be a redneck if Jeff Foxworthy once said, you know, about like that first apartment thing. That was me. I started out at a minimum wage. I'm squeezing out the money and saving some money to do this one component at a time, your stereo. I was the one with, yeah, at least I was the metalhead and crossed over into some country. If you had rock and roll and metal, and crossed over into country and sometimes crossed over into funk. If you're somebody or black or white watching, you can make jokes about it. I don't know if you have the closest thing I had was the Jeff Foxworthy philosophy. But if you know any black comedian, a comedian that's black that said something like this, give me a YouTube clip or give me a name. I'm telling you, because that philosophy was me. The $1,000 stereo, you're eating out of a can in the. You're eating out of cans of ramen noodles, maybe go to a restaurant for a while, but you got this expensive stereo. You're not eating the greatest, but you have some good tunes, you know, and then you're working your way up. And you're trying to, and then when I got lucky and got my big break, you know, got to be that long-haired hippie with this good-paying job that, you know, of course you piss it away and don't last, but I did there. You're above minimum wage, all of a sudden you feel rich. And, there was that thing where, yeah, I could save a little bit of money and all that, instead of with credit getting that new couch delivered and all that, and the neighbors seeing that, different people. And so the first thing you need is basically food, maybe, and then if your life is too mundane, you squeeze out some money to just be in some restaurant somewhere. There's some interactive talking, like people in the town that you know, or you may have worked next to in the same town. A little bit of, not like even your friends and hang out, the person that owns the place, because you're right there, idle jibber jabber, you know, so you're not like isolated or some recluse or something, you know what I mean? I do these videos about gang stalking, okay, and some of you guys tune into me for that. And this dovetails in the philosophy where this is one of the things I wanted to stress if you got this far in this video. that the reason why I made those videos, that the very point to those were you should be paying attention to why gang stalking thing is real, and you got the gossips and all that. Not that paranoid that they say that the Vice YouTube channel is saying that you think helicopters are in the sky, and or that episode of Dr. Phil where that woman's tearing up her couch to think you're on surveillance. There was an idle time in my life, just because I have a ponytail and all that stuff, and it appeared that I tried to get rid of that appearance to being some recluse, because you got the gossip, because when you first started some fucking job, you're taking the extra overtime to pay your rent so you can get yourself some things, and not get, instead of buying cigarettes, instead of buying booze, you're trying to get yourself maybe a stereo and little things that start out. And you work at extra overtime. By the time you get home, your fucking day was shot, right? So you got to get your bath, your shower, and then, in my case, restaurant right across the corner, you know what I mean? But people talk this shit, they assume somewhere because of the way you look that you don't work or something. You must be some person that's back in the day where they were given welfare more liberally, and you got a check along with food stamps, or like some of us grew up when our parents got divorced and your father left, and before you had a stepfather, and they got rid, until you had these other presidents later on that were actually wanting to crack down on it, and other politicians wanting to crack down on that. And some of the people that were refugees in countries that hate us abroad, and they're still handing it out. But that's another story. But anyway, the gossips would try to be saying that shit about you, or profiling you, or whatever, because both the high-end minded church-going people would say this, you're probably on drugs, but then if the other opposite side, that they're always going to the bars and the drugs, you don't see you in the bars all the time. Two different parties trying to say you're some kind of fucking recluse and trying to create this Silence of the Lambs scenario, and start talking in pictures. And the reason why they don't see you around except for maybe in some restaurant or something, or because you fucking working this overtime, your day is shot, so you decide to go to some restaurant without, and you don't decide, you try to get out of cooking, you start making more money, eventually you start eating out more often. You're not seen in their thing, whether it's the bar or the church. You get this. So they don't get it. I mean, your day is damn short, so you spend the rest of your time, get that CD changer going, and then before you know, you gotta go to make sure you get your ass up and get back to working. That's the kind of shit that I had in my first apartment. And people know fucking well, they just love to do that shit, because some people actually think that shit and presume because they hear it on somebody else. There will be some people that know fucking well, and they just they hate you and they're jealous of you, and they like to pull that shit. And it's like there's this, if you got this far in this video, I want to say a separate video on this, and this applies, I hate to say, even to certain people that are nothing but alcohol, they don't do no other drugs, or just cigarettes, or just vaping. It's not that everybody is like that, but some of those other drugs that people should get to is like this. But I hate to say, some of the people that get together at a younger age with cigarettes is like this. There's an element that doesn't like the church or doesn't like police state, but if you're not with them, they hate you because, you're not supposed to have that new, it's a Bluetooth speaker and a nicer phone these days, and back in my younger days, the nicer stereo and speakers, you're not supposed to have that nicer boombox or nicer stereo. There's something wrong with you. You're selfish, and with all kind of swear words, and usually with a lot of the F word mixed in there, the rhetoric, because it's supposed to be a virtue. You're not. There's an equality extremism, which the diehard far left, you got far left, far right, the diehard Democrat, far left, far hard liberal likes these people because it's equality extremism. It's supposed to be a virtue. You're selfish if you want to get yourself something nice and decide to not get into the habits, because according to them, it's some virtue that you get when you're supposed to get in that crowd, and it's supposed to be begged to be graced in that crowd, like it's so great. And if you get anything at all, you're supposed to sell it so that you can get a case of beer or a pack of cigarettes for your friends, or in the worst case, drugs. But I'm just trying to say that a lot of people that don't do drugs, and it's just for cigarettes, some of them are like that, you know what I mean? And, well, fuck. I actually, there was a scenario one time when my brother used to drink. The weirdest thing happened just for beer or cigarettes. I knew somebody else that this happened. That somebody smashed his side window somewhere in his car. They didn't take no expensive tools. They didn't take his car stereo. They had other valuables that he could have had. They took the beer. He had a bottle of beer in the car, and they busted the window to take the beer. They didn't even, and usually people take shit, you know, that they can sell it so they can buy beer and cigarettes. So there's a real problem where there's people, just for, if you leave a pack of cigarettes on the dashboard or one beer, that they'll bust your window just to grab the beer because they need it right now, and leave the rest of the valuables in there. I'm like, holy fuck. I mean, so there's an element even with the vaping or the legalized marijuana. They say the marijuana is the least addictive, and not everybody that smokes a little pot, whether you listen to Led Zeppelin or Hendrix or there's some reggae, they're not all like that. It used to be harmless. But you will get them crowds now too, the die-hard crowds that are really far to the left that, oh, you tolerate them, but they're passive aggressive against you. You try to act like they tolerate you. They want to act like they're being oppressed. Because, marijuana should be legal now, but yet, you know, there was for maybe a joint and cigarettes, you know, I mean, I'm talking about tobacco, things that are legal, and a beer. You get these crowds that if you get into, oh, you're not allowed to buy or have anything nice for yourself. Say if you want to save your extra money or pay the rent late to buy something nice for yourself. There's this virtue that, oh, you're some kind of asshole because you won't sell it to buy that or whatever too. And then, oh yeah, you must be on the side of the church, you must be on the side of the police. You know, so you got two different sides of people that would be judging. So what I'm trying to say, the real key to getting over is not being dependent on anything. You need, at the very least, in the worst case scenario, if you're really down and out, food, water to drink, that hopefully, and the pipes of the water, if you can get a bottle of water, if you drink out of the faucet. Or if you live in some city, there's some cities and places you can't drink the water. And I've worked in industrial places like that have sink for the water, you have bottled water. In my area, if it's a warehouse place, they'll tell you don't drink the water because it comes straight from the river or some kind of damn way or something. But yeah, you need food, and then once in a while, you know, a little bit of recreation. And this partying lifestyle or whatever too, especially these people that were out of college or they want to rebel against their mother or father that scream, swear, and chain smoke, but at the same time read the Bible, rebel against that, get their first apartment and go with I want to party, have these friends. And then yet there's these people that are all high, and you look at them, they're all high, they look like fucking like zombies, like John Carpenter's They Live. And you're not a certain way about them. Even you work next to some of them and they're just laughing in your face. They think that you're supposed to all hang your head and shake. You're supposed to be looking stupid. And some of them are so fucking high that they actually think there's like in a world with their highs, a make-believe world that they don't see what the hell's right in front of them. Whether it's us, you want to say spiritually or politically, or if you're even an atheist or humanist, what you see right out there in the news that politically or whatever it is. Shit that's out there, and then there's some people that could be so high on a kite living like on the streets, you know, and all that stuff, and be like, you know, the whole world could collapse, come to an end, you know, their asses would be just, they wouldn't know one thing or another, and then there's no source of the hide, and wears off, and then there's no way to get it. There's a very ugly reality that comes in, you know what I mean? So, but here's one more thing before I end this video too. That's because I follow the Canadian prepper thing, and a lot of his videos make sense. There's like all these scenarios. One thing that I would want to say, like I said, if you get or you're richer or you're poorer, I'm going to do a separate video on this. I'd say a few words right after I make this video about it, because that's what I meant to do. Like if you wind up homeless or temporarily homeless or living cheaper, or say if it's a prepper scenario or whatever reason, you don't do no drugs, you wind up temporarily homeless. My thing, I'd be the first one, stay the fuck away from those people in those tents, the homeless people in their tents. You see all kind of needles, I see these documentaries. This is where I'm going with this video. That look at these videos out there that like in these countries, Romania. Look up people these people living in the sewers in Romania. And then you got, I seen this video on some of these people. I think Vice Channel has a lot of them. These people in these communities, they're all living in tents, and this guy pointing to this tent. See that guy in a tent over there? He used to be a chef for a real good restaurant that made buku bucks. So now he's just living in a tent because his drug habit took him over. And, is that what the fuck that you really want? But then if you strive to be better than that, avoid of that, you're some kind of asshole that you want everybody to jump over the cliff. Somebody's supposed to shame you into... there's a taboo. You're not allowed to talk about that stuff because if you look like you're a little better than that. But if you want to entertain the ideas like I do, like some of the prepper channels, that if you were to wind up, like say in a prepper situation, a financial collapse, or say even there's no financial collapse, you find yourself temporarily homeless. The thing which I would say, if you got anything out of this video, got this far, the first thing that you do, stay like in John Carpenter's They Live. You ever watch John Carpenter's They Live, where there's that one homeless community and there's these people, Roddy Piper was in, him and the other, what the hell is that other actor? I had a couple friends that I was talking about, you know what I mean? John Carpenter's They Live, you know, I have friends that are both black and white. We joke about this. I said, some of my friends that are black, I said, hey, why don't we do a parody, do some cartoon sound effects? Put the glasses on, doink, doink, and make some cartoon sound effects. But anyway, in that movie, they showed, you know, the Union building. This is a Union shelter, we know, sleeping on this site. And then it was showing these homeless communities, bulldozers just running over and crushing it. So there's a thing where you don't need the key to getting over, whether you're rich or poor, that makes you a little bit richer than you are. The thing that will make you a step richer than you actually are is no habits. And if you wind up in any kind of bad scenario, the first fucking thing you'd want to stay away from. Any homeless community, there's needles, there's all kind of shit like that. If there was some other kind of homeless community, like Henry Rollins talked about the tent communities that were the Vietnam vets, you know, you gotta walk, and then, I don't know, but there's, stay away from that shit. Don't be huddling with the other homeless people that it's all the drugs and the needles, because they're the first ones that would be purged if you want to entertain the idea that anybody would be purged, even if they're not the very least purged. You know, there's some states right now, they're putting them all in jail or some kind of program or something with it. You gotta do the research or look on YouTube or Google it to find out that what are conspiracy theories or not. But you don't gotta be a conspiracy theorist to wind out to do a little bit of thinking to wind up where, okay, if anything happens, where do you want to be? And where do you not want to be? That is the key thinking that you should have, you know what what I mean? So if you're getting anything out of this, this is what I'm basically trying to say, you know what I mean?